My name is Scott Berkenbush, and my family has been in town since 1909.
When they came to town in 1909, where did they come from?
Jamaica Plain, I believe.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay. And we're here now on it in the house that you built on land that was part of your family's farm.
correct.
Okay.
Correct, yeah. My father and I built the cabin in 1975, and yeah, and the land, like I say, was my great grandmother Albertson from uh, 1909. Mainly the colorful stories of the town.
Mm-hmm.
The various people that were involved in various things. My grandfather had been the police chief, and then my father was the fire chief. Then he became the police chief.
So, what was your grandfather's name?
His name was Kenneth
Kenneth Berkenbush. And
Berkenbush.
he was the police chief in West Newbury for
Was
about what time frame?
I'm gonna say it was like the 1930s or so, in that time frame, 30s, early 40s, that time frame.
And then your father was the fire chief?
My father was a fire chief. He became a fire chief in 1954. Yeah, it was obviously they moved here from someplace else and brought along all their friends, and so they would come out on the weekends and help them with all of the different farm projects that they wanted to do. And my great grandfather was still involved in forming the unions in Boston, Filene's and Jordan Marsh and those types of things. So he would actually travel into town. And then they got divorced, I think around 1925 or so. So my great grandmother was a divorced woman with a farm on her hands and kids, and I have my grandmother and her brother, and there were two other sisters. One passed away early, and then the other one lived a long life
Wow. So she was alone on the farm with children,
with children and
managing all those
managing
responsibilities.
all those things. They tried to do like well, obviously it was a farm, so there was produce and stuff like that. They had milk cows, and then they also had they tried to do things like a weekend retreat where you'd come out and you'd spend the weekend there, and they'd provide the meals and that sort of thing. So, but that really didn't pan out. None of the things really panned out too much. And then in the early 50s, the town decided that they were going to go a regional school. So almost a third of the property wasn't taken by eminent domain, but the eminent domain picture was out there, and so they sold that, and obviously they sold the fields and the productive portion of the farm. So it became a struggle to keep it going, but they managed to one way or another keep things moving along. Well, my sister will be able to explain a lot better than I will, but basically they were looking for a utopia, that type of thing. So they were looking for the commune type of living that was popular in the 60s, but at that point in time, that more enlightened type of thing. So they wanted a place that they could, get out of the city, get out of that rat race, and come into a place where you could survive and get your own crops and make your own, you know, uh, jams and jellies and all of those types of things. So they put a lot of serious time in it. And then my great grandfather's interest turned. Well, not only did it turn, but the First World War came up, and so he got involved with the Red Cross. And my great grandmother said, "If you leave, just stay away because you're not coming back." And so, but he was always one of those people that wanted to be involved. So he did that. He and then later on, then he did another commune type of place down in the Virginias.
Oh, he did.
Yeah, uh, so it's funny, we had an historian that came by about 10 years ago and went through all of the old letters in the attic to find various things of how uh, they were involved and how what he was trying to do at that point in time, because they were doing their thesis on my great grandfather. And so
In the commune that he established in Virginia,
yeah,
and they were trying to get back to the whys and the behind what was behind that.
behind
Oh, how
that,
interesting!
yeah,
And you have letters in your attic from that
I don't.
era.
I don't. My sister,
Does.
my sister may, but I think that the writers have pretty much gone through most of the stuff that's been in the attic.
Yeah. Oh, that's neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, although it was a farm, it was kind of a different type of farm.
Yeah.
And my grandfather had Berkenbush had come with he'd worked for my great grandfather and came back with him, and that's how he met my grandmother and
Came back with him from where?
he was involved with oil wells of all things. But back in that time frame, people were involved with railroads and oil wells, and so he was involved with those, and then so he came back and brought Kay back with him from Pennsylvania to and there again, that's when oil wells were in Pennsylvania. They weren't in Texas. They were fairly local. So, kind of interesting. Then my great uncle was involved with Ford Motor Company, and he was involved with the B-1 the bombers and the production line of getting a bomber a day out. So he was involved with that. Then got my grandfather involved in a little Ford dealership that they had down at the end of the road here in a barn, and they would so there was all sorts of things at the time that made money, didn't make money,
Yeah.
businesses. My father, he came back from the war and bought the gas station in the square, which was the Jenny station at the time. Then he sold it to Dick Spaulding, and they took and
That was Dean's relative, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Then they took the building and split it in half, and half of it went down the street to my father's oil company and became the office for the oil company. The other half went to Dick's house on Garden Street, became the garage, which is still there. And then they ran these businesses for a number of years, and people come and go, and the gas station gets sold again to Dick Brunalt, and the oil company gets merged with a company from Haverhill and then sold to a bigger company, and then my father becomes a police chief. So to think it's not like somebody goes to work at Western Electric and 40 years later they get done. These were people that were involved with all of the various things.
They were just trying to make it work.
Yeah.
Whatever they could do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always thought that my father could make more money if he wasn't involved with the fire department, because you just about get done with a project and all of a sudden an event would happen and you'd have to drop everything and go help somebody. And then
a project being,
well, like we went into the Chelsea fire, and then at midnight my father came to me. He says, well, you got to get back to the town because you got to deliver oil in the morning. So there was a couple of us that were sent back from the fire in Chelsea because it was winding down and a new shift was coming in and that sort of thing, and we headed back so we could go deliver oil. And
because everyone had a regular job on top of that volunteer work.
Yeah.
Wow, that must have been crazy to be at that fire.
It was huge. We were going in with a fire truck, and there was a big cloud on the horizon. And the closer we got, the more we realized that it wasn't a cloud, that it was the smoke from the fire. And they were all the rug merchants that had all these old cloths and everything. and they had caught on fire. So I remember a building that was 7 stories tall, and all of a sudden the windows got dark, and then all of a sudden the fire exploded from all the floors at the same time, all the way up through the building. So all we were barely doing is we fought it more like a brush fire. We were just containing the edges, and they set up this huge bunch of ladder trucks and water right at there was a school right next to where the highway goes in the Mystic River Bridge, and they set up there as a defensive line, started pumping out of the river, and were able to hold it at that point in time. But it was just going. It was, yeah.
What year was that?
I think it was early on.
Like the late 70s or the early
Yeah,
70s?
the late 70s.
Yeah.
It was before I was married, so it was the late 70s. 269 Main Street, just before the food mart, just before the property that we own in the square, 277 Main Street. And so, yeah, I grew up there until I was probably 14 or 15 years old. And then we moved to the house on top of the hill.
House on top of the hill.
Up here, there's a house that my father had built. Because what they did is they developed a portion of the land to create an income for the farm, and which worked out well for a few years, and managed to keep. A property like the farm is one of those things that you kind of kick the can down the road and hold on to it as long as you can. And then my sister can tell you better, but they sold the development rights to the town for the farm property. So the town actually has the development rights for the property, so it'll always stay agricultural. And my great grandmother was on the library trustees, and then my grandmother went on the library trustees, and I went on the library trustees. So we were on the library trustees for, I don't know, 70 or 80 years in a row. So it was a long spit we had.
Long spit. And then your wife worked at the library for
she worked on the
16 years.
Yeah, and she had volunteered before that, and then she had volunteered for the Friends, and she still is one of the Friends with the library. So between the library and the fire department, we've kind of had a long-standing involvement in the town. Yeah, it was interesting. We got on, myself and some friends, in the early 70s, and I stayed straight through until 2016. And I always said that I did almost every job on the fire department that they had. Not only the fire department, but the fire company. I was the president, I was the secretary, I was the vice president, I was the treasurer for a little bit. And then with the fire department, I got on and then became a lieutenant, a captain, a deputy chief, and then finally a chief for a while. And so it was an interesting time frame. I always felt that the best time was when I was a lieutenant, and you were able to go and help out at the fires and do things. And one of the things when I was a library trustee, I thought that I would do that instead of doing the fire department, but then realized that there were just two entirely different ways of volunteering. One was more of a committee-based thing, and the other one was more of a hands-on thing.
Yeah. Did you see a lot of change in the fire department in that time?
We did, and West Newbury happened to be one of the front runners. We were the first one to get the SCBA's, the air packs, and then we were the first one to go to the large diameter hose, and then we were the first ones to do a lot of training and involving in the training. So that at one point in time we had sponsored the Mass Fire Academy to come up and do a satellite thing for Firefighter 1 and Firefighter 2. out of West Newbury. So basically, we trained an awful lot of people to go other places and to get on other departments.
What do you think was the motivation behind being, front runners in that regard? Who was moving that ahead?
Well, initially my father was, and he was very interested in making sure that we had, obviously we weren't a full-time department, so we didn't have full-time personnel. But the one thing that we did have is um, very good equipment. So they were constantly replacing the trucks when they needed to, and constantly upgrading the equipment to try new things and to get. Uh, it's kind of an interesting town because only a third of it is on the water system. So this means the other 2/3 are off the water system, and but you have to bring all of the water to the fire. So you need the trucks and the tanker trucks and the mutual aid agreements and all the other things that allow you to put a big fire out. And over the years, we've had quite a few large fires. The Congregational Church in West Newbury I was on then, and the Orkland Farm up on top of the hill with very little water pressure at all. And so there have been a lot of major fires. I always said that a call fire department, you get 5 or 6 big fires. They may all happen in 1 year, and you may not have anything happen for 5 or 10 years. And then all of a sudden you have a rash of things that go on. And we did a lot of with mutual aid. We went into Chelsea. I went into Chelsea for the big Chelsea fire in the mid '80s, and we would go up to Haverhill and Newburyport to back them up and work with them. So it was an interesting time. It was, yeah. I put 47 years in on the department. So
It's amazing.
yeah.
What are some of the things that stand out in your mind? You mentioned the Congregational fire. You mentioned another one. What are some things that stand out from those fires in your memory?
How well trained people were, even though this was something that they did part-time. How well trained they were, how unified they were. I mean, they would fight like cats and dogs at the fire company meetings, and then when an event happened, they'd all be in on the event, working as hard as they possibly could, to the point that sometimes it's crazy what they were able to do and able to accomplish. The Congregational Church is a good example, because that particular fire started in there was a room that had they were gathering old linen and stuff like that to sell. At the time, they used to sell that to places like Chelsea, where they would make rugs and things like that. So they had this whole room, and the fire actually started in that general location, but then went right up into the attic, right off of that. So almost immediately we had a fire that was running wherever it wanted to up in the attic, and we were able to not only pull ceilings but able to knock it down and to save the rest of the structure, which had a school that was attached and a number of things like that. So it was just unheard of to be able to do that. And one of the big key components in doing that was, by the time it went out through the roof, we already had ladder trucks in from Amesbury, Haverhill, Newburyport, West Newbury, almost surrounding the fire itself, so that when it actually did go through the roof, we were able to keep it at bay and keep it in that one spot. So kind of amazing feat for any department to do, and also very much so for a call fire department to do.
Mutual aid is really essential in a town like West Newbury.
It is, and being on the same page. One of the things I mentioned earlier about the Firefighter 1-2 programs that we did, and one of the big things that came out of that was the interaction between the neighboring towns, because they'd all send students to this class. So all of a sudden, when you went on mutual aid, it wasn't the first time you met that person, and they all knew the same terminology and the same tactics and strategies. So it's actually pushed things into like the next generation, where you'll see, well, whenever anybody has an event, that all of a sudden they're calling neighboring towns, and the neighboring towns know exactly what to do and how to interact with them. It's the social organization of the fire department. And what the fire company would do is it would raise money. Now, if you go to the bandstand and watch the thing, you'll see the fire company selling hot dogs and hamburgers and stuff. Well, those funds that come in there are enable the fire department to be able to get extra things that they wouldn't normally be able to get with the budget that the town gives them. Similar to what the Friends of the Library do, or when somebody donates money to the library after somebody passes away. Those types of funds go into a fund that's able to help them along and get the various things that they need, without having to go on the tax base, without having to go in and go back to the taxpayers to upgrade things. A lot of the equipment, especially in the fire service, has a short life. It has the life of probably 10 to 15 years. The turnout gear, the ladders, all these integral parts. So it's very costly when you have to start to replace those types of things. Even the equipment, you look at the trucks under Memorial Day, oh, that's a beautiful truck. Well, it is, but it's 25 years old. So this means that the guy that created the pump or built the parts for the pump may not even exist, that company. So all of a sudden, if something goes wrong, you have to have that piece manufactured, and that piece of equipment may be down for any length of time. So the replacing of things in an orderly fashion is very, very difficult for especially a call department to do, without overburdening the taxpayers, which everybody knows that, there's just so many dollars going in, and so many places that need the money.
Yeah. I didn't know that about the fire companies. I thought that they relied on town money exclusively.
No,
Yeah.
no. You'd be surprised, especially if you went back over a 30-year period or a 40-year period, as to how much of the replacement of things was funded by the fundraising of the fire company. I would venture to guess it to be 20%, maybe 25%.
Wow.
Everybody hears about the big ticket things like the fire trucks, but
Yeah.
all the little small things that have to happen.
Wow. And has fundraising changed over the years? Have you seen like a drop in fundraising or any challenges or?
Yes and no. It's funny because over the years, the fundraisers, a lot of them were driven by the people that were involved. One of the guys liked rockabilly, so all of a sudden he organized a dance every winter for the fire company, and the fire company would do that. Another guy was they would make spaghetti and meatballs, so that was a big way of fundraising. Now, it's the hamburgers and hot dogs at the bandstand, and also the pancake breakfasts that they do, and that sort of thing. So it's it changes, but a lot of the times when it changes more because of the people that are involved and the people that'll step up to the plate.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because when I grew up, you'd get up in the morning and they'd say, "Be back be back for dinner." And you'd go and you'd build forts and you'd do this and you'd do that. And nowadays everybody is like so mindful of where where the children are all the time. They're either in one program or another, and never really left alone per se. Um, but I always say I guess it's a great place to grow up and a safe place, but um, people tend to leave and then they come back. It's funny how they come back. You may not hear or see of anybody for their whole career. John McGrath is a perfect example. Went away, had a whole career up in Alaska, and then came back. Yeah. And jumped right back into involvement.
Yeah. Yeah, it does seem to draw people back.
Yeah.
I can see why.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What else I have, G.A.R.? So does town feel different to you now than it did when you were growing up, significantly?
I don't think it does. And the reason I don't think it does is because things change. But I quite honestly think that all the people, all the players, all the people that are making the decisions, all the people that are doing the fundraisers and the various businesses in town and everything are all doing it for the right reason. I don't see anybody with really their huge personal agenda. A lot of times politicians get involved, become a selectman or get on a board or something. They initially have an interest, but it really doesn't there are so many people involved that it really doesn't overshadow the overall piece of it. You know, committees have come and gone. The Women's Club has come and gone. The Boy Scouts, and now I think the troop is over in Merrimack, and so all of those various things have come and gone. But then all of a sudden, the youth sports leagues are just huge at this point in time. The new school, I was talking to Tom Flaherty, who had been the coach for years at Pentucket, and he said that he loved the fact that they were playing under the lights because now both parents could come to a game and support the kid who was playing in the game. So I know a lot of these things are very expensive, and you can find issues with one thing or another, but for the most part, it's really still a great place to be and to be from. It hasn't developed as fast as some of the neighboring towns. They put in zoning early on, and so a lot of the overbuilding didn't really happen. Now a lot of the stuff that's being built is very expensive, so you have those types of issues that come along with it. But for the most part, I really think that people still enjoy the community.
What do you think that is about West Newbury? Because I get the sense of that too, that the people in West Newbury are really dedicated and invested in West Newbury.
I think it's the fact that if you think about a little New England town, if you think about going up to Vermont or New Hampshire or one of those places and think of a little community town, West Newbury just reminds you of that. Whether you go into the library or you go into the town office building or you go, you talk to one of the superintendent of highways or the fire chief or the police chief, you can actually talk to these people. It's not a big committee that you have to, go and look out. I mean, Memorial Day didn't happen this year, but it's the first time I remember it not happening just because of the weather. And obviously it was a safety factor, so they had to do something with it. But I remember, you'd go to the training field and the police chief would be there, or the fire chief would be there, or the emergency management director would be there, or the head of the library would be there. All the different people would just be there. Selectmen's, distinguished people that they may be honoring that year for one reason or another, the school. So I think that it just has that feeling, that New England feeling, like you used to read about, the old stories. As I get older, I'm retiring. I've retired, and one of the things I was thinking about the other day that I kind of miss is the fact that I always thought that when I retired, I would have time to spend with my elders, the people that were there. And over the years, they've managed to pass away one way or another. And it's interesting because you get to that time when you have the time to spend with them, and you really don't anymore. So I think I'd encourage people to spend more time with people. I think that was the one thing that the pandemic kind of drove people back into their homes and back to their relatives and back to their friends. All of a sudden, they had a close group of personal friends that they kept in contact with, and they may not have seen them for 10 or 20 years. Now, all of a sudden, they're still calling them up every week or two to find out how they're doing or what's going on or that sort of thing. So I think it was a good wake-up call as far as what's really important. Take time to enjoy yourself. I mean, I remember, all those years working and doing things. I had 7 W-2 forms one year, and so it's just nonstop. Work, work, work. You get home, and then you have to go to this committee meeting, or you have to do this, or you have to do that, and um, I think I would I would just recommend that you take time to enjoy those little things and not be so cognizant of the things that you really can never change anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very good point.
Yeah, it's so silly. I look back at my life. If I had a tenth of the time that I spent worrying about things or trying to make something happen or back again, I would have a whole lifetime. It's funny because, even though the stories kind of change, the value systems are all similar. And I think that those are the things that we tried to pass on were the values of, paying attention to things and doing stuff. And the funny stories are always there. They're crazy.
Tell us some.
Well, my grandfather was, when he was police chief, the town had a motorcycle. So he went over to one of the officers' house to show him how to drive the motorcycle. And the officer lived on Mud Point, which is at where Maple Street and Georgetown Road and Ash Street connect. There's a little triangle there. So he got on the motorcycle and he started driving it around. Well, he didn't know how to stop it. So he just kept driving and driving and driving until it ran out of gas. And they were all watching and just laughing at this whole performance. So, you know, a lot of times you just can't take yourself too seriously. It really is. They the town is. I mean, you can get frustrated and you can get excited, but
Yeah.
yeah,
You gotta laugh at yourself.
yeah.
So your grandfather, who was the police chief, he
Mhm.
was the daughter of, the son of the.
No,
Okay, tell me.
no, he was uh, my great grandmother Albertson. My, her daughter was my grandmother Jean, and my grandmother Jean married Ken Berkenbush.
Okay.
So that's how, or Kenneth Berkenbush. So that's how that all kind of evolved. And the funny thing is, you know, when they talk about West Newbury, they say, "Oh, you Birkenbushes." There really aren't that many of us. There's a handful. It just happens that we tend to do a lot, or end up in the paper, or end up, you know, on committees and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's
Or as police chief or fire chief
Uh,
or working in the library for 15 years.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
We the new public safety building. I was involved in the building of that. Well, the the building that we tore down, my father was involved in that because they had moved it from the square where the parking lot for the Catholic Church is, and moved it to the new location and built that in the early '60s. So there again, all those nights and weekends that we were supposed to, as a family, we were supposed to go do something. We were down picking up stuff when they were constructing the the new fire station, and helping with that project. So it's 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 kind of funny when you look back at time, how much stuff goes on.
Yeah. And how much you were involved in as a
Hmm.
family.
Yeah. So this gazebo that we're in, the wood for the gazebo was taken down on top of the hill. They were big pine trees, so we took the pine trees down and we milled them all up and created a big pile of wood. Now the significance with the pine trees was that my father and my great grandmother went to Essex Aggie and got all these little saplings and planted all the pine trees on top of Chestnut Hill because of the chestnut blight. The chestnut blight came through and wiped out all the chestnuts, and so they had gotten all these. So they went all over the hill. When you drive away or look at any of these pine trees that are 100 and something feet tall, those were all planted by my father and my great grandmother, all up over the top of the hill. So we milled this up, and then when I went to build it, I said, I managed to get a builder, Bob Knowles, who had retired at the time, and convinced him to build it for me. So he said he would, but my wife had to stain all of the pieces of wood. So my wife had a big platform down back, and she would stain all the sides of the pieces of wood as he cut them before he put them up.
Wow. That's a job.
Yeah.
That's a job. We just interviewed Rock
Yes.
Dower yesterday,
Yeah.
and we learned that I think the same person who built your gazebo
Yeah.
redid the hand tab, the Gardner 4.
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
And I think he might have also built the circulation desk and the magazine racks at the library. I'm not sure. I have to check with Gene.
I think that may have been another guy. There was another guy that built a bunch of desks and stuff for the town. Rock would have known who that was. But yeah. So it's interesting to see how these people sort of interacted with other people. Even my wife, she met me at a party here. Well, she came with her sister, and she said, "I'll never know anybody." Well, she walked through the door, and half of her relatives were here, and we had never met. We were in our 30s, and we had never met, and but we knew everybody. We had known all these different people
in common. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's hard to believe that you'd never heard of each other or met, because you were just at Pentucket and she was in Newburyport, right?
Yeah. Matter of fact, she'll tell you a story of she was riding her bike one time, and she rode all the way down the lane and saw the old farmhouse, and she said, "Oh, this is a beautiful farm," and as a teenager.
Yeah.
So I told her it was Providence. I think I've kind of managed those because there again, you especially like with the fire department, you'd be on a committee and you'd be tooth and nail with somebody about some issue or something, and then the fire alarm would ring or the horn would go off, and you'd have to jump in and go help somebody else that was really needed your help. It didn't sort of brought everything into perspective. It's I honestly think that, with the exception of a handful that I can think of, that 99.9% of the people involved with the town, especially over the last 100 years, have been there for the right reasons. They may have been misinformed. They may have not really understood what they were, well, the ramifications of what they were going to do or not do. But for the most part, I don't think that there's any maliciousness or, you hear so many times in so many communities where somebody's getting rich over something. Well, can't remember anybody getting rich over anything in West Newbury. They were all worked. I mean, they may have been successful. They may have had a career or a business or that sort of thing. But it was all work.
Yeah.
It was all work. Nobody was given anything. You find stories and then you say to yourself, "Oh, I was around during that time frame. Oh, I remember that happening. Or I remember them fighting over the town pump, spending 150. We were at a town meeting in Albert Elbows fighting over this town pump, and it's the trough that's out on the training field, and they wanted to fix it so that they could. And he started on this it went on for 45 minutes about the blue bird of happiness coming down, and he'd land on the handle and maybe do his business, and therefore the thing is contaminated and you won't be able to use the water. And it's like.
And you witnessed this?
Oh yeah. Yeah. The town meetings in the early town meetings were just something to actually go and watch and listen to.
They were more performative?
Oh, they were so much. And the moderator was critical.
Yeah.
If that moderator knew just exactly where to put you in when you're raising your hand, it would turn the whole tide, because you'd watch people come in and there'd be a third that hated the article and a third that loved it and a third that just didn't care. And then all of a sudden you'd see the crowd change one way or the other, and some of these people that were talking against something, they'd get up and their friends would look at them and say, "I'm going to vote for it now because you're an idiot," or "There's no way I'm voting for that article. Who dreamt that up? Who was in charge when that thing came down the pike?"
Mm-hmm.
So they were a lot more fun than they are as an adult.
They're still pretty lively, I have to say.
I remember talking to my father, and I said, this one guy said he says he's a lawyer. He talks all the time. Of course he's going to get up and be able to direct people the way he wants to direct people and get things done. And then, especially with the fire department, you'd go and you'd bring an article up, and it would go one way or the other, and then you might have to bring it up the next year, and then the next year, and then sooner or later it gets done. But it's just getting everybody to the same page at the same time. I voted for the school when they wanted to have it over in Merrimack. And my father says, "Why'd you vote for that?" I said, "Well, because when it comes back in 10 years, it's going to be 3 times as much. It was 50 million at the time. It's going to be 3 times as much. And, it's not going away. Something is going to have to be done." And I said, also, it takes all the teenagers, the juvenile delinquents, and ships them over to Merrimack, gets them out of West Newbury. He didn't like that answer.
And the vote did come back, didn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. And it was 150 million.
Yeah.
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 And if it had been built 3 years later, it would have been 300 million. The town has been interesting because we had that the comb factory that burned, and that employed almost 3,000 people at the time of the fire. And then the Hayden Brown steamer that came to town was bought by the people that had the factory, and
the steamer being the fire truck.
the fire truck that they had, and that ended up in the Henry Brown at the Ford Museum.
Rock mentioned that yesterday.
Yeah. And so it's funny how a little tiny town like West Newbury has had such a history with things.
I had no idea that cone factory employed so many people.
Yeah.
I'd seen pictures of it.
Yep.
But I didn't know it employed that many people.
So at the turn of the century, we had probably close to 4,000 people. At the turn of the 1900s to the early 1900s.
Yeah.
In the 1950s, we only had like 2,700 people. Yeah. So, obviously that factory being burned down, or the industry changing, just like Newburyport with the shoe stores, the shoe companies, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Things change so much. I mean, you think of Newburyport and you think of the clipper ships. Well, that was one phase, and then the shoe factories was a huge another phase, and then urban renewal, and now the high-end restaurants and that sort of thing being another phase, and they're so it's not stagnant. It keeps moving on.
It does. And it's interesting to see places like Haverhill being revived, and it's a constant cycle of
even Lowell with the mill walks and those types. It's very cyclical.
Yeah.
Even the Viking thing.
Yeah.
Which my wife took me off in the woods. We went looking for that for years. And,
did you?
Yeah. And then my father says, "Oh, I know where that is. That's right over here."
Oh, get out.
Yeah.
And he brought you there?
No.
He wouldn't tell you?
Oh, no. He knew where it was, and we figured out where it was, and it actually had caved in from when there was actually a family that had gone down and taken pictures of it and stuff like that, probably in the 80s or so. But since then, the thing has actually caved in. But it was amazing walking the back part of West Newbury, looking to see where it may or may not be and that sort of thing, to see the topography and to understand that it had all flooded in enough so that these Vikings were able to come in on their boat this far to be able to camp and do things